Hey guys, today I wanted to do a little bit more of a serious video because it's not all about my surgery. As exciting as it's been, this whole project really came to fruition because of my personal experience with mental health issues, everything I've gone through myself. So, directly, family members that have gone through problems with mental health, and friends, and God, like we see it every day in the news where because of not being able to get help, maybe mental health is mental health is making the news for the wrong reasons. And a lot of the things that I've been through really did lead up to my decision to have surgery. So even though I've come through, I think, pretty pretty strong in the end, it's definitely not been a fun road. And I really think the more that we talk about it, the more that we normalize it. And by normalize, I definitely don't want to take away the seriousness of it. I don't want it to be like, oh, well, everybody's got it, so it's not really a big deal, because it is a big deal. It's always a big deal. And that's why I want to help take away the stigma that surrounds mental health issues. And I've dealt with a couple of different aspects of it. The first real time that I remember dealing with it, and of course at the time I didn't realize that that's what exactly was going on. I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old, and I was laying in bed. Who knows what time? I shared a room with my two sisters, one older, one younger, and I needed my mom for something. Who knows? When you're five, it could be anything. And I just remember being absolutely terrified of calling for her. Getting out of bed wasn't an option. Yelling for her wasn't an option. Waking my sisters wasn't an option. And it wasn't even, I mean, it sounds so silly. It wasn't even that I was scared of getting in trouble. I never even made it that far in my process, in my brain. I just was terrified of somebody knowing that I was speaking, or I can't even tell you, like, it was paralyzing fear at the thought of calling out for my mom. And at 5 years old, that's kind of it's kind of the nature that should just override. Like when you're 5 years old and you need your mom, you need your mom. Especially because my parents divorced when I was really young. And so it was just my mom and three of my sisters. So she was kind of my whole world, and I was just terrified, just completely terrified. And of course, I didn't know what was going on. I was five. I laid there and cried silently, because when you're terrified of people knowing that something is going on, you don't draw attention to yourself, and you make sure that you're quiet and that you're not standing out. And then honestly couldn't think of anything else that happened specifically after that. I always used to call myself people phobic. I had no idea there was a term for what was going on with me. I was just a shy kid. Like, if you were to ask anybody, I was a shy kid. I didn't really have like a bad childhood. My parents divorced, but it wasn't messy. It wasn't terrible. There wasn't like a whole shit ton of fighting. Um, to be honest, I don't remember my biological father being around when they were still married. So, I mean, it obviously couldn't have been much of anything to write home about, right? I remember after they split up, things we would do with either one of them. Um, at this point in my life, I actually don't have a father-daughter relationship with my biological father. He is in my life, and I do consider him a friend, but that's it. The man in my life I call my dad is my stepdad. He's been around for quite some time. I've known him since, I think, before my parents, my mom and dad, were even together. not my biological. I know it gets confusing using those phrases, but he is my dad in really every sense of the word. We have been through some shit. I was a troubled teenager. Like I said, I didn't really have a bad childhood. Most of it doesn't really stand out. I was shy. I didn't have a lot of friends. I found out quite a few years later that I actually had less friends because of who I chose to be friends with, which, I mean, kids are assholes, right? Like, it's not a surprise. But in no means was I like, I wasn't picked on, I wasn't a bully, I wasn't a jock, I wasn't a drama kid, like I just kind of existed. And that's fine with me. Towards the later years in like elementary school, I started like the people phobia, the social aspect of things did kind of blow up, but not in any like really sudden explosion. It was like one day it was mostly fine, and then the next day it was just like fire, you know, underneath everything. And I was just kind of waiting for it to explode. And then when I was just after I finished grade 6, we moved back to the town that I was born in. And that's kind of where things started to get really bad. I was shy. I didn't like new situations. She wasn't even my friend. I knew one person when I started in middle school, and she was kind of a bitch. Like, not necessarily to me, but to a lot of people. And so I didn't really want to have anything to do with her. And the kids who always seem to reach out to new students who don't know anybody are not the popular kids, right? They're like the band geeks, and I was in band. I played clarinet and saxophone. So it was kind of a jam, you know, like kids want to make friends with you, you take it. You're not, like, I was never a judgy kid, so whoever wanted to be friends with me, we were just friends. I didn't care what what group they belonged to or didn't belong to or anything like that. But it definitely did impact my social life because other kids care about it. So I I started feeling really like, because I was one of those kids who didn't have a big group of close friends and I had friends from every single group, I didn't really feel like I belonged in any one of them, and that I didn't really have any close friends. And so I spent a lot of time reading, listening to music. Of course, we lived like half an hour out of town in this tiny little community, and nobody that I was even friends with lived out there. So I spent a lot of time. I tried, like, you know, writing poetry and getting into any kind of solo, possibly artistic arts, crafts, hobbies, extracurriculars that I could on my own. But honestly, like, I'm just not that creative. So, of course, being that old, you know, going into grade 7 and 8, boys started to become pretty much the main part of my life. Didn't really hit me bad until I got to high school. And when you go to high school, like, your emotions and your hormones just go insane anyways. And that's where, like, I used to say that it's hard to explain. Like, when you smell something, you smell it. Like, you don't just see something that's burning, you smell it. And I'm kind of the same way with emotions. So if I'm feeling something or somebody else is feeling something, it's like a full part of me. Like, I feel the vibrations of it. I feel the sounds of it in my head. Like, I feel it on my skin. And being in high school is like the worst thing for someone like that. I didn't enjoy high school. I really kind of hated it. At one point, it's kind of in a transitional thing where I did actually have a really good best friend transitioning from like grade 8 into high school. And we separated. She went with a group of people she had been friends with previously. We both came from different schools. And I kind of got lost again, you know? So, like, I was focusing on boys and skipping school, and I didn't belong anywhere. I didn't understand why when I'm walking down the hallway, I feel these things that were like not even my things to feel. You walk by somebody who's having a bad day and you just absorb it. So that's really when I started like going through serious bouts of depression. I didn't feel like I had anybody to connect with. I was never close with my sisters when I was younger. It was kind of them two against me for the most part. And then when we moved, it was everybody kind of just did their own things, and nobody was against anybody, but nobody was really with anybody either. So I got to high school and I was just on my own. My mom and I weren't close. My biological father and I weren't close. I kind of bounced in between my mom's house and my father's house, getting kicked out of one place, going to the other. And I mean, like, when you're 16, 15, you think you know more than you do. I won't say you think you know everything, because I really didn't. But I definitely thought I had more answers than I did. And I thought I was making good decisions, and I wasn't. And I was getting the kickback from those bad decisions pretty well immediately. Um, so the depression, the anxiety, the people phobia that I didn't know was like agoraphobia at that point kicked in pretty hard. When you feel alone, everything's kind of emphasized. And grade 9, grade 10, I think I was in grade 10, I actually started self harming. So that's when things got really, really, really serious. I think it was the same year. It started off really, really badly. I was in gym class, and a friend of mine and we were both sitting out that day. And I was just talking about like how bummed I was about something. I have no idea what it was, honestly. Something really not important. And she had Paxil and something else. And she was like, "Oh, here, just take these. You'll feel like yourself in no time." And I was like, "Okay." And I walked outside the gym and I dumped them because I know that number one, taking somebody else's prescriptions is a dumbass idea. And second of all, it takes more than one to make any difference. So I chucked them, went on my way, didn't think anything of it. I don't remember doing this, but my sister says I did, and she is the one who called me into the principal. So I apparently had a conversation with someone about it over the phone while she was in the room, or I said something to her about it. I really couldn't tell you. But the next day in class, I got requested to come to the office. So the principal was like, "Hey, somebody told me this is what happened," and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, "Whoa, dude, like, like calm down. I didn't take it. That's a stupid idea. I don't know why she even gave them out, but apparently I wasn't the only one she gave them to. She just like went around, and what she was calling them were happy pills." And I think I have since learned that this was like not uncommon for this particular student, and it was not uncommon in my school at all. So the principal was like, "Well, you need to prove to me that you didn't take it." And I was like, "How could I do that? Like, I chucked them in the garbage can." And she was like, "Well, did anybody see you?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I didn't think anything of it. If I had, I would have been like, yo, dude, can you just like watch me throw these in the garbage can and then like give me your name and number in case I get in trouble for it?" Like, didn't even cross my mind. So I got suspended for 2 weeks. Myself, one, two, three or four other people who were acquaintances and friends and whatever, and then the girl who actually did the giving. We got suspended from the school property for 2 weeks. We were supposed to do, except for homeschool or Saturday school, which our parents were supposed to drive us to school every Saturday to do schoolwork. We had to do presentations in a couple different classes in schools on these drugs, and we had to attend drug prevention counseling, which to me was stupid because, like I said, I already knew doing it was a bad idea, which is why I didn't do it, and it was pointless. So I kind of resented that quite a bit. My mom made me go to like 2 of those sessions because we lived half an hour out of town, and she was like, "I'm not driving you to school on Saturday when you're not allowed to go during the week." So it was kind of a joke, like not in the sense that like what they were trying to accomplish was a bad idea. It definitely wasn't. But like even when we had a meeting with the school board, each one of us and our parents, and I said, take my blood, take it, and that will show you, and then I can just go back to school. But they wouldn't, of course, because they're not gonna waste the time and effort on that. Um, but that's really where I decided going to school wasn't going to be something that I was going to do. So I started skipping class all the time. Sometimes the same class, sometimes just because I didn't feel like going. I would just like walk around somewhere, go hang out, watch hockey at the arena. Didn't matter as long as I wasn't at school. And of course, that isolated me a lot more than I already was. So I was alone. I chose to be alone, but I didn't realize the impact that it was going to have on me. So, um, the drug prevention counselor that we started going to, as weird as it is, as a grown up, I'm actually friends with her now. She's an amazing human being. And the first round of cutting, of self harming, I went to her because we built a connection. At that point, it wasn't a friendship, but it was definitely somebody that I could trust. That I couldn't trust anybody else. I didn't have that relationship with my sisters. I didn't have any friends that I had a relationship that close with. My mom, no, there's no way. And of course, because at that point I pretty much hated my stepmom, and my biological father and I, we didn't really ever see each other, let alone talk to each other, especially enough to build up a relationship where I could go to him with something like this. So I went into her office and I said, this is what's going on. Like, I'm super feeling like shit. I started doing this, and everybody always asks, why? Why are you cutting? What is that getting you? And I didn't want to talk about this in any way to be like, cutting is cutting, it's no big deal. Because it is a big deal, and it's not just cutting, it's any kind of self-harm. Um, Cutting, just for me, it was like, and I could never answer the why. Really, I can guess at why it made me feel better. I know that it was like, it just stopped me from feeling anything emotional because there was something physical going on, is really my best guess. Just thinking back at it, and anybody watching this video, like, you've got to know, if you're doing it, if you're thinking about doing it, that's not okay. It's not okay. It's okay to feel like you need an escape and you need a release and you need to do something about it. Hurting yourself is not the way to do that. It's not. 100%. Don't. Get help. Reach out. Like I said last time, you need a person. Any person who can be your person can be your lifesaver. That's what my drug prevention counselor was. She got me in touch with a colleague of hers outside of the school system. And I went to go see her, and we did kind of jive a little bit, but she had me doing these exercises that are, to me, like, didn't really do anything. You know, like, people say, oh, get angry and punch a pillow. That doesn't work for most people. Like, you have to find the thing that actually works for you. And for me, unfortunately, that thing was cutting. So I needed something that replaced that made me actually feel better and work through those negative emotions instead of, like, in the moment, instead of like, when you're in the dark of your room and you're set up to do this, you don't want to put on your shoes and coat and go out in -30, walk 3 kilometers to somewhere where people aren't going to hear you screaming like a maniac, throwing rocks and yelling about your problems. That wasn't a healthy coping mechanism for me. I'm sure it works for some people. It was not for me. So I saw her a few times before she wanted to bring my mom in. And the session that my mom came in, where I told her what was going on, because of course she had no idea. You know, when you're doing this and you're kind of conspiring against other people to do this without being found out, you're like, fuck yeah, I live in the north and it's wintertime and I can wear long sleeves year round and this is fantastic. Nobody knew anything. They just thought I was like a moody teenager. And when my mom came in and my counselor made me tell her what was going on, I mean, she cried, she was upset, obviously. But then after we left, we were walking home together, and she said to me, "You make me want to start smoking again." And that crushed me, you know? I worked really hard on myself to be able to tell her that to her face, not in a note, not over the phone, to her face. And that made me regret it. That really, any trust that had been there, it was just gone. It was gone. And I didn't feel like I had done the right thing. So that did actually make me stop cutting for a while. I didn't ever I didn't ever want to feel that like betrayal ever again. And I'm over it now. Like I am. It's part of the process I went through to get to be where I am. But it was really fucking awful. Because especially at that point I was living at my mom's house, and I shortly after that, even though I did stop cutting, I did attempt suicide. And not a lot of people actually know that. It's not hard to say out loud. I have said it out loud before. But it's not easy to look back at yourself and know that you are capable of something like that. And I think a lot of people think it's a really selfish move, and I mean kind of from the outside it is. But you have to consider that anybody who is thinking about committing suicide, anybody who attempts suicide, and anybody who actually is successful, which trust me is not like the best word for it, but it's what happens. They're not thinking of themselves. They are only thinking of you. They legitimately 100% with their whole entire being know that they're actually doing you right, that you are better off without them, that no matter what the pain is that you're going to go through because they're gone, it's better than what you're going to go through with them in your lives. So if you're watching this and you don't know anybody who's ever done that, or if you were of that mind frame who's like, well, kind of deserved it because that's like, selfish dick move. It's not. So please don't think that it is, because that's that kind of point of view. It actually really makes me upset because I've been there. I have family members who have been there, and I don't take it lightly whatsoever. My laptop is actually going to die here in a second, so I'm going to take a break, get my power cord, and then I'm going to start my next video where we get into the really fun part of trying to find help for yourself and what that meant for me, what kind of hurdles there were, what kind of obstacles I had to overcome, and how I did it. Yeah.